The U.S. says it's committed to providing reliable access to natural gas to global trading partners and holding other countries accountable for cutting greenhouse gas emissions. And to find out more about the U.S.'s clean energy strategy at home and abroad here in Asia, Roland Lim joins us live from the Singapore International Energy Week Summit. Roland?
Angela, the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 is widely regarded as a game changer in the drive towards net zero. Now, the law gave out billions of dollars in clean energy incentives that will take years to bear fruit, like new nuclear energy plants, upgrading of transmission grids, and large wind and solar projects. Now, for more on this, I'm joined by U.S. State Department's point man on energy security, Geoffrey Pyatt, Assistant Secretary for the State of Energy Resources. Geoffrey, good to have you with us on the show.
Great to be in Singapore.
I guess let's start with explaining to us U.S. priorities when it comes to promoting energy security in this part of the world, Asia.
Right. Well, as Fatih Birol from the International Energy Agency pointed out in his remarks here this morning at Energy Week, this is a region which is going to be the fifth largest demand center in the world for energy. So the choices that are made by governments in South Asia about their future energy pathway is going to have a material impact on our success in meeting the climate goals that we have adopted together. But also, this is a region that's critically important on supply chains. It's a region where there's a strong alignment in terms of concern about the impact of climate change, but also an understanding that we have an opportunity to focus on new technologies like clean hydrogen, small modular reactors, offshore wind, new battery storage technology, to provide the energy that our economies need in a way that is both affordable and more sustainable.
You mentioned Fatih Birol from the IEA. Saudi Aramco CEO also took the stage, and he defended the need to actually extract more fossil fuel, despite pressures to actually address climate change. I mean, the fact that no one size fits all for any country because of affordability, because of sustainability. Agree to disagree?
I agree with Amin Nasser that we can't have a one-size-fits-all approach. Where I think we might disagree is on the importance of long-term decarbonization. And I will say, Aramco deserves credit for the investments that they are making in methane abatement, in carbon sequestration, in clean hydrogen. But we have to push that pace as fast as we can. The United States today is the world's largest oil and gas producer. Just last week, we produced more crude oil than ever before in our history. So we have an obligation ourselves to work really hard on figuring out how to produce the fossil energy that the world is going to continue to use for a period of time in the least climate damaging way possible. But we have an opportunity today because the marginal cost of clean power in most cases today is less than the marginal cost of traditional energy. So we want to push the envelope in that direction. And the imperative of doing so is the climate crisis and the importance of delivering energy for the international system in a way that's truly sustainable. But if there are two things that I have learned so clearly in this role in particular, one is there's no contradiction between energy security and energy transition. We actually can have it all. And second, we have to, if we don't deliver that energy security and the affordability, we're not going to maintain support in our democracies for the transition that our climate demands.
I want to put the U.S.'s track record on the spot here. Would you say that the Trump administration's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord of 2017, did that severely damage U.S.'s credibility when it comes to fighting climate change?
So I'm a diplomat, so I'm going to focus on the future rather than past. But let me tell you this. Two things. First of all, what's really impressed me is to see how fast the levers that the Inflation Reduction Act provides are transforming the U.S. economy. We've seen $500 billion in new investment, which is driving down costs, accelerating innovation. And a lot of that innovation, a lot of that investment is happening in traditionally Republican states. And I can't predict what's going to happen in the U.S. elections 3 weeks from now. But one thing I can predict is that whoever is president after January 20th is going to find a U.S. economy where there are a lot of workers and a lot of jobs that are tied to that energy transition. And frankly, people are going to choose their energy choice not based on its label, not based on whether it's clean or dirty or solar or crude oil. They're going to choose based on the affordability and sustainability. And I think, as I said, the great thing about the moment that we've arrived at today is that we don't have to make that hard choice, which was implied by some earlier phases of our politics.
By the same token, though, because the U.S. is pumping more, it's churning out more gas, the Biden administration's freeze on approvals for new LNG exports earlier this year, though, that also dented confidence among
I hope it didn't. I hope it didn't. And a key part of my job, in fact, is leveraging America's energy abundance to reinforce our national security and our allies and partners around the world. So treaty allies in Asia like Japan, Korea, Singapore, our NATO allies in Europe. The fact that we are able to provide an affordable and reliable source of gas, which reinforces their energy security, is a huge national security benefit for the United States. And as a practical matter, and I'm going to leave the pause to the side because it was really driven by domestic decision making, we're going to double our liquefaction capacity in the United States by 2030. And if you believe the IEA, the global supply of natural gas is going to be in glut by the time we get to the mid-2030s. I can't predict that far out. But one thing I can predict is that the United States, especially with our close allies like Singapore, is going to continue to be a very reliable energy supplier.
So even with the new administration, whoever that may be, there's going to be policy consistency.
On this issue, I'm quite confident of it. I've traveled a lot in Pennsylvania in this role. I understand how important this sector is to U.S. economic prosperity. I also have spent a lot of time in Houston. And one of the things you hear in Houston today is, and we heard it on stage in the panel that I participated in with representatives from Exxon and Chevron, all of our big traditional energy companies are working really hard on new energy because they see that's where the market's going.
Okay. Final question. The escalating conflict in the Middle East, the ongoing war in Ukraine, what's your assessment on further disruptions to supply?
So, I mean, the good news is that despite all of these disruptions, and you could add to your list the Houthis in the Red Sea, the shutting in of 500,000 barrels a day of Libyan production, despite that, oil prices have remained low. And I think that's a reflection of how the global energy map is changing. It's a reflection of slow demand in China. It's also a reflection of the huge growth in American production in Brazil and Guyana, non-traditional producers. And we hope, as regards the Middle East, which is clearly the most combustible of the situations that you described, that the focus now is really going to shift to diplomacy and de-escalation. And that will provide a further reassurance. So for now, energy markets are working properly. Supply is plentiful. And that's a good development for energy importers around the world.
Okay, Geoffrey Pyatt, thank you so much for those insights. And that was Geoffrey Pyatt, U.S. Assistant Secretary for the State of Energy Resources. And we'll be back tomorrow with more live coverage from Singapore International Energy Week here at the Marina Bay Sands. Back to you, Angela.
All right, thank you so much for that, Roland. That was the CNA's Roland Lim with Geoffrey R Pyatt, who is Assistant Secretary of the Bureau of Energy Resources at the U.S. Department of Energy.